Welcome. I am super excited to be here with you and with one of my mentors, one of my favorite people on the planet. I think the world of you, Hollie, Dr. Hollie Granato. We met way back in Denver in our master's program, and I've just been a huge fan of yours ever since. And so, guys, we really just wanted to share some stuff that we've been talking about and that we think is really cool. Hollie's doing amazing work in this area. And so I invited her to share with us her thoughts and her experiences. So this is the Collective of Real Executive Women is where this is going to come out, but you might encounter this in anywhere on the web. So if you haven't heard of us, the Collective of Real Executive Women, also known as the Real Crew, is for professional women who want to get smarter and learn and apply the art and science of psychology.
You need like a hand sign, Tara.
Yeah, I do. These psychological tips and tricks can really be applied and help you communicate better in your work life and your home life. So that's what we're here to do. So with no further ado, Hollie, would you share with the people who you are, where you are, and what you're up to?
Yeah, thank you, Tara. I am a psychologist at Harbor UCLA and a clinical psychologist. So I work in the area of mainly emotion dysregulation, and my background has been, I think you probably remember this about me, Tara, I love everything. So I had a hard time sort of finding my niche. So I worked in addictions for a while. I worked with trauma and sexual assault, also more generally sexual behaviors. And then I guess in the later part of my graduate school, I really switched gears and I started working with a woman named Marsha Linehan, who created this type of treatment called dialectical behavior therapy. And it changed my life. I fell in love with it. And since then, actually, my work has really shifted to dialectical behavior therapy. And I came down here to Los Angeles to do work with basically disseminating dialectical behavior therapy and other evidence-based treatments to the world. So that's what I've been doing here. So I do a lot of training and teaching. I work with students, I do supervision, and I also train frontline mental health professionals. So I guess just as a disclaimer, I'd like to say before we get started that anything that I share today is not representative in any way of any of the organizations and or affiliations that I'm a part of. And also anything that we share, it's not, therapeutic advice. Really, you can only get that from your mental health professional who knows you. So we're really just going to be rapping about, I think, mindfulness today, right, Sarah?
Yeah.
Yeah, talking about mindfulness and, just giving some suggestions. I'd love to talk about my understanding of mindfulness, how it's been helpful for me, and in the hopes that maybe it could inspire somebody to learn more about it, that sort of thing.
I love it. So let's dive right in, Hollie. So I have your list of DBT books, but I didn't want to overread them or research too much because it's the same principle for parenting. Like, you don't ask the kid a question that you know the answer to. So I didn't want to ask you questions that I knew the answer to, just with the hope of coming from the same perspective of our audience. So I know a little bit about DBT from what I've followed from you these past couple of years, but can you recap it 30,000 foot? What is DBT?
So DBT was developed by a woman named Marsha Linehan. The original text was published in 1991 or 1992, but the origins of it start much earlier than that. And she wanted to develop a treatment to help individuals with high suicidality. So I think of DBT as a treatment for emotion dysregulation. I think in our modern age, a lot of people have, it makes sense because oftentimes the people who get triaged to DBT treatment are individuals who maybe meet criteria for borderline personality disorder, sort of have persistent chronic depression and suicidality and feelings of emptiness and things like that. But that actually wasn't Marsha's original intention, was to work specifically with people just diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. She really wanted to create a treatment that was going to be effective for individuals who perhaps just sort of a standard dose of CBT was not working out for. And in fact, perhaps if people were getting CBT treatment, maybe they were feeling even worse afterwards.
And CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's I think that one's been around even longer, so people are more familiar with it increasingly, and it's focused on really changing thoughts and behaviors. Which, I mean, I guess you could see how if somebody is experiencing chronic suicidality, that would be really useful. But the tricky thing is if you have a lot of emotion dysregulation and you're feeling horrible about yourself, and people tell you to change and just change and change and change and change, it can feel kind of invalidating.
Yeah.
So that's where Marcia came in, and she thought, we need to come up with a treatment that balances both change and acceptance. And actually, I don't know if the listeners are familiar with dialectics, but that's essentially what dialectics mean, is sort of honoring two seemingly opposites. So it's a treatment for emotion dysregulation that balances both acceptance and change.
Oh my God. I love this theory so much because I see how it applies. First of all, we're not saying that all the listeners to whom this will be relevant are in clinical depression or facing suicidality. Certainly if you are, please seek help. But for us who maybe aren't there, but have extreme emotions through the course of the day, right? And certainly there's so many triggers in our corporate lives and at work, or even with our family members. I think this is so useful. And I love the sort of two opposing theories, like how you can have a feeling, but no, you sort of need to change. Is that what the dialectics are referring to?
Yeah, you kind of hit it. Like, it's kind of like I need to both be aware of what I'm feeling, validate it, accept it, know that it's here for a reason, before I can even do anything about it or decide if I want to change it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, in recent times, so DBT was originally tested, there were many great RCTs, randomized controlled trials for people who, met clinical criteria for borderline personality disorder. But now it's shown to be effective also for anxiety, depression, ADHD, substance use, some eating disorders, like so many things I can't even name. So I think about how I'm hoping that some of these skills will sort of seep out more and more into the mainstream, because I have found them life-changing. And I think about, like, I was sort of taking some notes, Tara, before we hopped on here, about things that like occurred to me that might be useful, especially thinking about mindfulness. If I think about acceptance and that the other side of change, kind of knowing first what I need to change. I mean, that's all just mindfulness. And the thought struck me that it's sort of like, if you're struggling in the workplace, if you're unhappy with your job, or if you're super happy with your job, but there's something going on and you want to do something about it, the first step is to really get evidence and be aware of what is going on, how you feel about it, that kind of thing. And all of that is mindfulness.
Yeah.
I was thinking recently about how mindfulness is it's trending right now, right? It's everywhere. I go to, the grocery store, like if you go to Whole Foods, there's an entire rack dedicated to mindfulness. It's like, oh my gosh. And I always ask my clients, how do you define mindfulness? And it's like, everybody's got a different way of defining it. So for DBT, I think this would be kind of based in Zen Buddhism, but this is like my preferred definition because it's very simple. It's basically just being in the present moment. Just present focused awareness. We can live our lives in the past. I can say, like, for some of the clients I'm working with who have trauma histories, like the far past, or it could even be like, crap, like that parking situation this morning and I almost got into a fight with someone and I'm so angry about it. That kind of past. I don't know if anybody has anybody who's listening to this is ever like kind of somewhere, but you're not really there. You're like thinking about all of the things that happened. Like, my partner didn't do blank before I left, or like the situation with the kids in the morning. I don't have any children personally, but I have so many friends right now who are having babies, and it's like, there can be so much that happens before you even get to work.
Right. And it stacks up. Like I find myself getting stuck in that. And it's almost like I make a list of everything that I'm angry about and just carrying that with me. Yes, it's poisonous.
I tend to be the type of person who I live in the future. Like I'm an hour or two ahead of myself. What do I have to do next? And oftentimes I'm dreading it. I'm like, sometimes my students will be like, are you okay? And I'm like, oh, I have a really tough meeting later. Oh. I'm not like present with them. I'm like living my life in the future. So mindfulness it's an ancient strategy. I think some people would argue it's present in almost every world religion in some way. I know I've had some clients have a response to mindfulness, like, is it Buddhist? Is it attached to some religion? And absolutely not. Like, I think about contemplative prayer in Catholicism as mindfulness, which it's any strategy that just brings you back to the present moment. Like, I think of it like a trap door out of, if you're living your life in the future, living your life in the past. Like, I am just right here with you. I'm talking to you, Tara. I'm on the West Coast, so it's 10:33 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
I'm not in my yoga class in 2 hours. I'm not yesterday when I had an argument with someone. I'm not, oh my gosh, while we were talking 15 minutes ago, my boyfriend flushed the toilet. I hope that you can't hear it. I'm just right here, right this second.
That's striking me right now in this moment as like painfully, profoundly simple.
But it's really, really, really hard to actually manifest. I tell people that I work with, it's like muscle. Like, a lot of people think that mindfulness is clearing your brain of all thoughts and, finding peace, and you feel calm and centered. And I'm like, oh, no. It's like CrossFit for your brain. Basically, you're going to be bringing your brain back to the present moment over and over and over again. And you know what? Sometimes the present moment is not pleasant.
Right.
So, I think a lot of times mindfulness can be relaxing and peaceful. But sometimes mindfulness, if you're in a meeting with a coworker who is talking down to you and all you want to do is check out, actually bringing yourself back to the present moment might be the last thing you want to do, because you're doing everything you can just to white knuckle it through the meeting and stay in your seat.
That's funny. My background is around grief, and I always talk about like denial. I see people in denial. I hear things that remind me of denial as a theory. It's a really safe place to be. So thinking outside of the moment is a type of denial, right?
Like, the point that you brought up about denial is really useful to think about, because here's the thing that I would want the listeners to, I guess, reflect on for themselves, is you don't always have to be like in the present moment, and you don't always have to be kind of like distracting yourself to get through the day. I would want people to be strategic. So there are times that I strategically am not mindful. So like, I actually think that sort of choosing to be like denying something, if it's effective in the moment, is helpful. Yeah. My goal for everybody that I work with is just that it's not on a default autopilot setting. It's a thoughtful kind of conscious choice you're making.
Which is really the muscle building, right, that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, because like I could be like not loving my work, not loving my job, and sort of just knuckling through it, like getting through the day. And it can become such a default autopilot setting that at some point I just sort of like am living my life that way, and it becomes my new norm or something. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. And I think that's a flag, and maybe like a homework assignment for the listeners, but just to recognize where your thoughts are. And because it does serve a purpose to think about the future. You can't I can't go through my life and not think about what I need to do 2 hours from now. So what recommendations do you have for starting mindfulness as a practice or bringing it into your clients, to your life, to your client's life? How does that look?
Well, let's see. So these are some notes that I wrote down. So starting out with mindfulness, there's a lot of really incredible apps and things that people can try out. I used to work at the VA, and so there's this app called Breathe and then the number 2 Relax. So I said earlier that mindfulness is not necessarily goaled towards relaxing, but it's an app that you can set how long you want to breathe for, and it has this little ball that goes up and down a line, and you just breathe with it for 10 breaths. So there's, I think, a lot of value to actually trying out a strategy and even just building up that muscle every day. It's almost like going to the gym.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't even have to be while you're at work. If you're building it, it's gonna start to apply in other places. So like, for example, when I started doing mindfulness, I did it for 2 minutes every morning, Monday through Friday, took a break on the weekend. And my goal was, that was like my 2015 New Year's resolution, I think. And it was interesting because it had this impact on all these different parts of my life. And that's what the research shows, is even just practicing, like Thich Nhat Hanh, he wrote a book called The Miracle of Mindfulness. It's a super short, quick read. Would highly recommend it if anybody's interested in this. And he says small time, many time. He is a Buddhist monk from Thailand, and his whole idea is you don't really have to put this pressure on yourself to be doing it all the time, but if you kind of have like a practice, like a small amount of time that you're doing every day, that could be a great way to try.
I love that.
That would be like a way to start mindfulness. And there's so many different ways to do mindfulness. I may potentially have some ADHD characteristics. I have a very hard time sitting still. You'll notice I'm like, I like to do walking mindfulness. I just notice the soles of my feet as I walk.
Oh, Holly, that's deep. So like the feeling of your soles moving and just being aware of the soles of your feet as you move.
Yep.
Oh.
And anytime my mind wanders, because it's kind of, my judgmental thought is, this is boring. But when my mind wanders, I bring myself back to, I'm just, right now, I don't have to think about anything else. I'm just focusing on the soles of my shoes. And that's actually mindfulness. It's not the clearing your mind of thoughts. Our brains are wired to think. It's flexing the muscle of when our brain leaves whatever it is we're focusing on, bringing it back over and over again. That's when you flex the muscle. So I'm thinking about the soles of my shoe, there's a bee. Oh my gosh, where's that bee going? Is it coming towards me? Okay, walk faster. Oh, I'm focusing on the soles of my foot. Okay, my foot feels, ouch, it kind of hurts. Oh crap, I had that bunion. Do I need to make an appointment with the doctor? Oh my gosh, I'm focusing on the sole of my foot. So that would be a mindfulness practice. And you know what's funny is I had the epiphany, when I go on vacation, I naturally do this. I'm enjoying the smells and the sights, and I'm taking it all in. I'm like really there. And I think it's because all this stuff is new.
Oh.
Here in my neighborhood, I've seen this stuff a lot, so it's easier for me to switch on autopilot.
Right.
And it's almost like trying to bring that feeling to walking around my neighborhood.
I love this. That's such a great story about being on vacation and tuning in more easily because it's new. So I used to work downtown Mobile with my very best friend, my best girlfriend. My husband's my best friend, but my best girlfriend. And she would get sometimes really triggered at work, and she would call and we'd take it like a couple laps. It was awesome because exercise always feels good, but I would often think like, wow, she's feeling like even more anxious by the time we get back because she's talked about it all and she's sort of rehearsed it in her mind and planned, like built up this anxiety around what to do next. But I love the idea of walking in those moments to just take a breath and be present with your feet and recognize that moment. Maybe I'll recommend it. And maybe I need to do it myself. I know that I need to do it myself when I get triggered. That's a great exercise.
Because it's so hard. Our brains just, if there's a problem, our brains are designed to like, just try to fix it.
It's how we survived.
Yeah. to pull ourselves away from that and be like, oh, I'm gonna look at this tree.
Right.
Your brain's like, what are you doing? Mayday! Don't look at the tree. So it's almost like you're fighting. You're having to override this like catastrophe system.
Right.
You're like, I'm safe right now. I'm here with the tree.
That's right. Just me and the tree. Look at the tree. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick recap. So it doesn't have to be like an everyday, like sitting Indian style on the floor, sort of breathing and being peaceful and clearing your mind. That's not what mindfulness is about. It is about, in its truest definition, based on the dialectical behavior therapy, is being in the present moment, not in the past, not in the future. So I love the simplicity there, Holly.
We probably can't credit it to DBT. We could probably credit it to ancient Buddhist wisdom and ancient other wisdom. But I know that probably the creator of DBT would love that if she got credited for
as most recently cited by the creator of DBT. And then the exercises, I love the two recommendations you made. So breathe, number 2, relax is the app. And then the other, what was the book called?
The Miracle of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the walking exercise, just being mindful of your soles of your feet as you walk.